Good morning, everybody. Ryan here. Welcome back to How Farms Work. We've got Big Red behind me, and she's been sitting there for about a month now after I pulled her out of the shed so that we had more room, more space in the shed to move seed in, get the tractors in and out. So it's been sitting outside. In hindsight, I wish I would have left it hooked up to the trailer instead of parking them separately. Big reason is because it leaves everything back here exposed, like the fifth wheel plate. Look how dry this is now. I'm gonna have to grease that, and I'm gonna pull it up to the shed because I got to do that. I want to check the pressure in the tires. After sitting in the sunlight, I can definitely tell that the bags are starting to get bleached from the sun and they're starting to dry out. So I kind of wish that I had left it hooked up. It would have protected everything back here a little bit better. It's all been exposed for the last month. But I'm gonna fire this up. Hasn't been started in a month. Gotta flip the switch. The battery disconnected over here. Uh-oh. Oh no, someone forgot to, oh boy. Someone forgot to disconnect it. It was probably me, but I don't know how. Oh, she's dead. She's dead. I'm gonna have to go grab the battery charger. Yeah, I would say she's slightly dead. I'm gonna give this a little bit to sit and charge. And then once I get it fired up, I'll back it up to the shed, do everything that I got to. I already checked all the fluids and we're good to go there. It's just I gotta grease that fifth wheel plate and check the tire pressure. And I gotta check the tire pressure on the trailer as well. So I'll probably go do that while I'm waiting for it to charge. Yeah, over 110 psi. The front tires, you want to be at 110, and this gauge only goes to 100, but it went over that, so I think we're good. Now on our drive tires, we're aiming for about 85 psi, and so far I've checked 6 of the tires. These are my last 2, and they've all been perfect. So this inside tire is actually only 50. Not totally sure why it's so much different than the other ones, but this is why we check. This one's at 85. So this is the only tire we got to pump up. Let's give her a try, see if she starts. Sounds good. Nope. Gonna need a little bit longer yet. Second time's a charm. Have liftoff. We're at 60 psi, so the gauges just shut off. I'm gonna let it charge up a little bit more because the first time I hit the brakes, it's gonna dip right back down. Give it in a minute, and then I'm gonna back up to the shed. Check to make sure that the brakes aren't locked up. You want to be sure that all the wheels are spinning. I just checked the tire pressure, the trailer tires. So now I'm gonna back up to the grain bin and load with the intention of taking it down tonight, provided that Gavilon doesn't close. Depends how fast the bin feeds out. But I checked the gates, I just lubed them up and everything, I've got to shut them yet, but we should be good to go. Let's have a peek at what we took out. Really doesn't look like much from up here. We should be all loaded up and ready to go in the morning. I'm gonna make sure that I got all my paperwork and stuff in the truck. All the tires are good to go and everything, and we should be able to take our first load down. Now, we only have about 8,000 bushels that are going to be going down at first, so that might be 8 or 9 loads, depending on how much I can haul. But looks like the corn is flowing good. Looks like the corn that was coming out looked pretty decent, so it's not like it rotted over the winter or anything in there. Since we had such high moisture corn last fall, we were kind of worried about what it was doing in the bin, but it looks to be pretty good. The first day of hauling is always kind of like trying to ride a bike. Just kind of comes back to you, you know? Not too busy down here. Every time I come up on the weigh station, I just get anxious. I don't know what it is, but the DOT just makes you feel like a criminal every time you pull through or pull by the scale. You could be 10,000 pounds under your limit and still feel like a criminal when you drive by it. I just finished taking a sample. So the first 2 loads that we take out of the bin almost always have more debris in them, because what we're doing is essentially coring the bin, and that's where all the debris settles down in, is right where the auger dumps the corn into the bin, and all the fines settle in the center. So in your bin, those are the areas that tend to, if you have any heating issues or rotting in the bin, that's usually where it starts, because of all those fines in there. Gotta swing around back, and we're gonna dump this load off. Opening those doors is always a struggle. Right now it's an easy struggle because I have them all lubed up and everything. Just dropped it off. Gonna pull back across the scale. Everything's kind of interesting right now with the virus, because some people are okay with getting close to you, and then the scale house, you can hardly hear what they're saying when you're trying to tell them what you've got on, because they've got a piece of plexiglass over the window with a small little slit in it, so you can tell them what you've got and who it's for. So you're not even supposed to touch the phone here. You're supposed to call in with your personal cell. Kuster Farms unloading. Yep. Thanks. So I'm still used to hauling heavier loads. I'm not used to hauling under 80,000, and I only fit on 850 bushels on this load, which is 72,000 pounds. Need to put a little bit more corn on there. Moisture of the corn's 15. Test weight 57. You gotta be kidding. The road that I usually take to get here is closed. So they got a detour going, and you actually have to come around in a different part of town. You have to stay on the highway longer, but you have to take a right turn, and the road's really narrow. Well, there's a box on the corner, and I'm pretty sure it's a rite of passage whenever you bring corn from that direction down to Gavilan to hit that box, because one of the first times I came down here, I gave it a little love tap, and I see now that it's got a little bit of a lean to it. And there's been times where I've come down past it and the box is completely missing. Now I gotta make that tougher turn with that box on the corner when I'm coming in. I've hauled out about 6,000 bushels out of the Sioux bin now. Let's climb up and see what it looks like on the inside. Now you'll notice the ring around the outside where the corn is dark. So this spring, Travis and I climbed up here and we could smell kind of a funky smell coming out of this bin. But we climbed up in it, walked around it, you know, everything was fine. As far as we could reach down, we checked the outside and the middle, fresh corn. And as I started emptying this out, I got about 4,000 bushels out of it, and then it reached the outsides. So what happened in this bin, since this is our drying bin, is that last fall with all the wet corn that we had, one of the issues that arose was moldy corn. Well, when we were drying high moisture corn with the stirators can only reach out so far. So what happened was there's a narrow ring of mold around the outside of the bin where the stirators couldn't reach, stir up the corn, and couldn't dry it as well. So what happened is that there's a narrow band around the outside of the bin that's moldy. That's folded in on over itself. It's actually not that thick, but as it's been emptying, the moldy corn has been falling down on top of the good corn. But the ring is only about that far, which is the distance that the stirators go out to the outside of the bin. And we've been running the stirators, they've been fine, so we haven't been too worried about this bin. That smell that we had smelled, we thought was just coming from off the inside on the top of the bin, because there was a lot of dust last fall that we had in here, and we thought that was just molding. As far as we could tell, weren't any problems. I'll let it get up to just over 50 before I pull it forward and start filling the rear hopper. Now, an area of concern that I personally have at this moment is, what does the bottom 2 or 3 feet look like around the outside of the bin? Because the stirators don't come all the way down to the floor. They have to leave some space for the power sweep around the bottom. But I'm not still too worried about that. I think that the worst part of the mold's gonna be on top, because that's the furthest from where the dry, warm air was coming from when we were heating up the bin. So typically what you have on the bottom of the bin is usually much, much drier. But we'll just wait and see. I think the mold that we have in there right now that I see is gonna mix in just fine. It's not gonna really cause any issues. When we take a couple of those last loads down, might have a little bit docked for damage, but we'll just have to wait and see. I'll keep you guys updated as I unload this bin. Right now we've got 23,000 bushels that have to go down, so I want to get this bin empty because of those mold issues. I checked on the Sioux bin, and that was just fine, because that was dry corn that we had in this bin and we transferred it over. instead of wet corn. I just filled the truck up with the last load for the day, and I'm gonna leave the stirator run probably for a good day or so to try to mix that stuff up in there. Now that we're actually getting the stuff off the sides, it's breaking off in long chunks, not very thick, just long, and they're going down into the center and covering up the hole. So I've been trying to maintain a delicate balance between how far I can open the door and having it not plugged, because I have to keep opening and closing the door. It likes to, I should be running it fully open down there with all the chunks that are falling down through, but what happens is that eventually those chunks break up and go through and mix in, and then we have a full flow of corn through, and it plugs up the augers, and then the belt starts squeaking. And it looks a lot worse than it actually is. Well, look who decided to come along for this trip. Been trying to teach her how to drive Big Red, so I figured that she can drive around Gabble on. I've been looking at the weights of the trucks before me, and so far I've had the lightest truck that I've seen yet. My weight's about 24,500, and the one in front of me is over 28,000, and most of them have been around 26,000. It's a bit rainy out today. So she is getting down there. We've been fighting this on and off. It hasn't been feeding out all that great. We were running the stirator there for a while to try to mix all the larger chunks in. But right now what we're trying to do is just pretty much empty out the center. So that way, if we got to get in there for any reason, we really shouldn't have to by that point. But by the time you get the circle cleared out, if you enter the bin, you shouldn't have any crusting issues with any collapsing or anything like that. Not saying that you should ever get into the bin. I really hope we don't have to until we start the power sweep. And as you can see, we've got a couple chunks right there that are falling down towards the center, but she is getting real low. There it goes now. Oh boy. Now when that chunk gets to the center, it's probably going to plug up the auger. However, we're far enough along now that I can open the intermediate doors and start feeding out of those, because that center pump is pretty much down to the center. And the reason you don't want to open up those intermediate doors before you empty out the center one is because you don't want any uneven loading inside the bin, which can cause bin failures. A lot of the concept behind bins is that there's even loading across the bin. So if one side has more weight on it on one side than the other, the bin can crumple because there's no tension on the other side of the bin to hold the metal solid and sturdy. So I'm gonna keep feeding out. I'm gonna see what happens. If that chunk falls down in the center and blocks me off, I'm gonna open the intermediate doors, possibly turn on the stirator again. I'm not too worried about having to climb in there and clean this out until we get down to the bottom. But I'm hoping that the power sweep will go around and get all that moldy corn on the outside and mix it in. I have not been able to tell. I had one load where the damage doubled on the ticket, but since then it's been mixing in very, very well. It's really not that bad of an issue. It's just the outside 2 inches, maybe 3 inches around the outside of the bin are molding. Almost to the center now. I'm gonna turn on the stirator. If that center gate is down to the bottom, turning on the stirator will get more of the corn that's on the outside in towards the center. Westbound and down, 18 wheels and loaded. I can't be the only one who sings Westbound and Down. It's blending together real well. The damage has gone all the way up to 5. Travis and I were talking last night, and I'm actually not totally sure if it's 5% or 5 cents per bushel that they take off for the damage. But that's the most I've seen so far. It's gone back down. It just depends on where the chunks are and when they come through. But it's going together good. We've got the door open on the bin and the power sweep running now, and you can see that there's quite a few chunks in the bin, and we've been struggling a little bit to get to feed out. However, with all of the mold that was on the side of the bin, the majority of it is not going into the center. A lot of it stayed up on the walls until we got the sump in the center cleared, and that allowed us to get the power sweep started. So the power sweep's been grinding a lot of that stuff up, and it's been mixing it in very, very well. We could be in there, you know, pitchforking this stuff out, but for how the power sweep blends everything together, we'd be throwing out a lot of good corn when we're trying to shovel all this out too. So if it were truly that bad, we would be shoveling it out, but for how it looks in the truck, it's not really hurting us. Damage on the scales tickets did go up, but other than that, it's not really enough to justify going in there and try to nitpick all through the mold chunks and everything when the power sweep grinds it up and you can't even really tell. Not too big of a deal. It could have gotten a lot worse if the bin was wet. Otherwise, it would have been a major problem trying to get it to feed out in the center, and that's where you can have crusting issues where people enter bins and can suffocate because they can collapse. Next is going to be that Sioux bin over there, and the moisture in that bin has been anywhere between 15 and 17%. And 17% is high. We wanted it 15. So I set up the Agri-Dry system to run, and it's been running. We've had some nice hot days, so it should be drying on the inside of the bin. But I'm going to set the camera up, and Travis and I are going to get started. We're going to kind of try to be mindful of the stirator over there because Travis said that it's hanging on by one bolt. The middle one needs some work, but you can see that the walls do have some corn on them. It needs to be brushed off. We're gonna brush off as much as we can. I'm gonna go open the door up on the upper side to hopefully get some airflow going through here. So it took me about a month, but we finally did get all the corn moved out of the Sioux bin. We got it cleaned out and we sweeped off the sidewalls. So we got all the nasty corn off there. And now we gotta start cleaning out, or start hauling out of the Sioux bin. So that's pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to check out all of our other videos. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat, all how farms work. And with that, we'll see you next time.